What in your mind makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up?
So let me tell everyone what's different about this from what we've seen before. We have seen before where the Justice Department has rallied to the aid to bail out politically connected people. Examples that might come to mind from Donald Trump's first tenure in office, right? DOJ undermined their own prosecutors. They asked for a lower sentence for Roger Stone. They tried to throw out the Michael Flynn conviction. But what was different there is DOJ couched their requests in terms of the strength of the evidence. They said, we don't think there's enough evidence to support these charges. We don't think this sentence is fair given the actual nature of the case. Here, I don't know, maybe it's a credit to DOJ in some weird way. There's no pretense, there's no pretext. They say straight up in their memo, the reason we're doing this is because Eric Adams will support our very important immigration agenda here in New York City. Now, whether one agrees or disagrees with the immigration agenda itself, perfectly fair debate to be had both ways there. When you make a prosecutorial decision to dismiss a very serious indictment that would land him behind bars if he's convicted for several years because he's supporting your policy agenda, that is inherently political. That's why the pushback from DOJ has been so severe.
And there is one more thing that I noticed that was being said, and this is to you, Pete. So you heard, sort of the line is, Eric Adams is too busy to be dealing with this big case. We should get rid of it. We're not even going to look at the case. He's too busy. He cannot concentrate on immigration and some of the other things. Eric Adams himself had a press conference telling everyone how much work he's been able to do. So which is it here? When you look at this doesn't look good.
Well, he's not in a courtroom right now, which would certainly tie his hands if it ever got to that point. But to the extent that the American people care, and for the New Yorkers here, shock, most people don't care about your mayor outside of this city. They don't care about the drama at City Hall. And to the extent that people believe what's being called a quid pro quo, if you talk to Trump supporters, people who voted for what he ran on and are cheering every time he checks something off that to-do list, they're going to shrug their shoulders and say, so what? We have a job to do. And who cares about putting another corrupt big city mayor in jail when we have to tackle the immigration problem? So yeah, it is political. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a background in it. I'm not going to make that argument. But politically, Trump voters are going to look at it and say, who cares? Let's get the job done.
I'm going to disagree with you on that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I firmly believe, as somebody who is a senior advisor to Vice President Harris and to President Biden on their campaigns, this election was won because prices were too high. That is why Donald Trump won. When you actually poll Americans and you say, do you want justice to be subverted because, prices are too high or whatever it may be, that is not what people want. So I do think this is going to backfire. I do think, to Ellie's point, we've never seen anything like this before, and we're, day 27 in to this administration? This sets such a dangerous precedent. And there's also very little recourse. I mean, you're the attorney here, but the recourse is so limited. I mean, Congress can impeach. We'll see what the courts do. But we are 27 days into this, and we are already on a path to the type of authoritarianism that, frankly, Donald Trump has said all along, has said during the campaign that he wants to institute. Let
me just pick up that real quickly. I reject the idea that nobody cares or this doesn't matter. It's just a New York City thing. This is about the integrity of the Justice Department. Let me just, I'll put the...
If this was the mayor of Oklahoma City,
that's good.
No one would be paying attention.
Let me quickly pick up on that. So if this was the mayor of Oklahoma City or a Republican mayor and you had, I don't know, the former President Biden saying, you know what? I don't want you to be worried about all this. I'm going to go ahead and wipe this away on the DOJ. People, wouldn't they lose their minds?
Well, the judge could still reject it, and you can explain that far better than I can, but it doesn't mean that this will be dismissed.
No, but to Sarah's, what if the example was, let's take mayor of Oklahoma City. If the Biden administration said, you're under indictment in our hypothetical here, mayor of Oklahoma City, but we have a very important anti-gun policy that we think is necessary to protect the good people of Oklahoma. If you're on board with helping us with that anti-gun initiative, we will dismiss this indictment. That would be just as big a deal, and I think the American people would be just as concerned about it.
So I do agree. I do believe that, I'll say not even just Trump voters. I don't think most voters, most Americans care about this at all. But the problem is that Trump, they kind of stepped in it in this explanation of why it is that they're doing it. So, and I don't think, I haven't seen anything right now to suggest it's any sort of quid pro quo.
You just heard Tom Homan say it.
And the reason why is because I don't know what that actually means. Eric Adams, and if you consider his history, he was actually much more conservative in his approach, when it comes to immigration. And he was actually criticized by many Democrats because he wanted to do things around immigration that many Democrats, many progressives did not. So I don't know what Eric Adams, as mayor, would do differently when it comes to immigration. I think that even if he wasn't, charged with anything, I think that he still would be much more willing to work with the Trump administration than probably most other Democrat mayors around the country.
I actually think Pete is right. I think MAGA people really don't care. I really do. I mean, here you are, the mayor of Vichy, New York, doing a hostage video on Fox and Friends, basically. I mean, Tom Homan, is that his name? He's basically saying he's going to go up his butt. He says this. I mean, he actually is using the power of the DOJ. He's saying that. He's telling us the leverage that he has on national television. So he's just really blatantly expressing that quid pro quo, to everyone, but they just don't care. That's the real issue. Not that they're trying to hide it. They don't care about, Trump's doing everything out in the open, and MAGA loves that it's out in the open.